Hey, Julie.
Hi, Joel.
So, boy, we have had some very interesting guests this year on CareerLab. And, it seems like our guests just seem to be continuing to be very stimulating for you, for me, and for them.
I love the diversity.
It's very good.
It's a fun season, too.
And I think we're going to have a very interesting guest coming on next.
Taylor.
Okay. Well, let's see what the story is with Taylor.
Hello.
Taylor, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Okay, Taylor, this is Joel Siegel, and you are a guest on CareerLab with America's career counselor, Julie LaCroix.
Great. How are you guys
Taylor.
doing today?
We're doing fine,
Hi.
and we're happy to have you as a guest on the show. So we're going to get started. Julie and I are going to help you with some of your career challenges. I'll throw it over to you, Julie, and you can help get started with Taylor.
Well, how are you doing today, Taylor?
I'm doing fantastic. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to have me as a guest on your show.
Well, Taylor, I was intrigued by the email you sent me, and your situation is very common. I get it a lot. And I thought it would be interesting for our listeners who may be struggling with some of the same career barriers that you are, or if they have a loved one who is, to learn a little bit about how we might navigate these tricky waters. And also then, most importantly, Taylor, to help you with your particular situation. So why don't you, I'll just give a brief overview. It sounds like you have some kind of professional background in sales and then hit a bit of a speed bump with a legal issue that has resulted in a felony. And so it's about getting past that and learning how to navigate interviews and career path questions with a mark on your record. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Just to go into a little more detail. So, with the charge that I picked up, I spent from July 6th to New Year's Day, July 6th, 2018 to New Year's Day in Orange County Jail. And so obviously that creates a gap in the resume, and that's an abnormal gap that hiring managers are dealing with. And so really my biggest question that I would like to turn it over to you guys is how do I get a company to look beyond my past to see how strong of an asset I can be to their company?
We're going to answer that question, and I'm sure Julie can help you with it. But first, let's just find out, if you don't mind, what did you wind up in the Orange County Jail for? That would help us understand how we can mitigate that on your career optics.
There was a car accident, and I had some alcohol in my system, so it was a DUI with a car accident.
Right, and that's why you were not able to avoid those 6 months that you spent.
Right, exactly.
Okay, that's what we needed to know. And Taylor, how old are you?
I'm 27 years old.
27, good, okay. And in addition to your professional background, what's your educational background?
I actually, I have an athletic background. I'm originally from the East Coast and moved to the West Coast to pursue athletic goals. I got my AA at a junior college down here in Orange County, and then actually received an athletic scholarship to the University of Nevada in Reno, Nevada, and graduated with my bachelor's in human development and played football for the University of Nevada.
Congratulations! That sounds
what
like
an
really, really great. And in terms of sales that you've done professionally before you had this little speed bump, if I can use that phrase, what were you doing? What were you doing? What were you selling? And what was your what kind of sales were you in?
I was actually I ran at a full recruiting desk in IT recruiting.
Okay.
Did you enjoy IT recruiting?
I actually did enjoy IT recruiting, and so it was something that was extremely new to me. I don't have much of an IT background at all, but the company I worked for had a great training program, and I just really, it kind of had an altruistic feel to it to help people get jobs. I mean, it was putting food on their table again, and I really enjoyed doing that.
Aww.
That's wonderful, yeah. And how long did you work in IT recruiting at the sales end before you had this little event?
It was only about 7 months until
After you had finished school, in other words, you took this job.
Yes.
Good. Okay.
No,
well,
I had a job before that, and I was working at an athletic recruiting company, kind of advising high school students and their families in what they needed to do to give their kids the best chance to play at the collegiate level for football, but I just wanted to pursue different opportunities because I didn't see much room for growth with that specific company.
Right. So I think we have a couple of things we're going to do. Julie's going to help you understand how to present your optics in a way that will help mitigate the little problem you had. And then Julie and I will kind of help you. I know that in your email you said something like, I don't want to be defined by the little, thing that happened to me. And I'm going to try to help you not be defined by that.
Right.
So
what he wrote was beautiful. He said, I need help branding myself without letting my felony define me.
Right. So we're going to help you with that as well. But let's start with the optic part. And Julie, you want to jump in there?
Yeah, sure. When you were working in the IT recruiting role in that 7-month period, Taylor, did you feel like you were on your career track? Like, wow, I'm really getting some momentum here. This is really, I'm learning this. I'm picking this up. I'm enjoying it. I'm helping others. This is something I could really go the distance with.
I really saw that whenever I worked with that company, that sales was going to be my future. I really enjoyed getting up and I really see myself as a people's person. I didn't know if particularly IT recruiting was going to be my career long job, but I definitely realized with that job that sales was going to be my career.
Okay. And your felony is considered a non-violent felony, correct?
No, actually, it is considered a violent felony for some reason. That's how the state of California deemed it.
Okay. It's not my place to comment on the hiring legalities. There's a very, very excellent organization called the Society of Human Resource Managers, shrm.org. I would jump onto that website and see if you can find some articles. I would also take a look at some of the hiring practices that are enacted into law in the state of California, or whatever state you're going to be pursuing work in, to try to understand a little bit more about what the trends are, what the current guidelines are, what the opportunities are, and what the obstacles are. Because even though it looks like there are a lot of obstacles, there are opportunities. I've had a lot of HR senior manager HR clients themselves who have come to me, and I always ask them about how should I advise my clients with felonies. And I've had a little bit of mixed answers, but generally they're encouraged to apply. That seems to be what I have found. But again, I am not a certified HR professional. That is not my area of expertise. So I would definitely go to the source and double check those details.
But Julie, I think one thing you might be able to help Taylor with would be, before we get into the second part of this morning's call, Taylor, it might be good for you to hear from Julie about how he would manage dealing with that question when it comes up in a job interview situation.
How might you? Let's see how you might pitch yourself, Taylor. How would you overcome that if they asked you a question in an interview?
Well, okay, that is a really, really good question. And I've been going through this. I've been obviously applying for jobs, trying to get back into the corporate world since my release. And how I brand myself is just I made a mistake, and I can take accountability for my actions. And I had to go through a lot of therapeutic work to work through that, to work through the shame and the guilt of what I did, because I do feel bad for my actions. And but at the same time, I will never put myself in a situation like that again to not only harm my future, but to put the stress that I did on my family and my friends and my support system and the company I worked for, because I was very successful at that company that I was with at the time, and I just had it taken away from me in a split second because of a bad decision. And so that I know the consequences that I paid for, and that's something that I never want to have to deal with ever again.
Okay, let me jump in here, Taylor, and just comment on that. How
do people react to that in an interview? Have they not hired you, or have they offered you a job?
A lot of them have had different corporate policies where they aren't able to extend an offer now.
Right. I think that's going to be what you're going to run into in terms of the corporate response.
Yeah, I would go to the smaller companies.
But before we get to that, Julie, I think there's a key point we have to cover, which is Julie asked you a few minutes ago how you would describe that if you were asked in an interview. And then you gave us your description of how you would say that. And I want to respond to that editorially. That was probably the best way you could handle that. Mm-hmm. Here's what I noticed about what you said. I do a lot of interviewing for companies I work with. I'm on the front line of interviewing and vetting all the time, Taylor. I listen to candidates all day, every day, who are applying for jobs at companies in which I'm the executive leadership coach. If I heard that response, I would be impressed, and here's why. Because it seemed honest, to the point, and it took full responsibility and suggested that you could move on from a problem like this. That was one of the best responses I've ever heard to a very difficult question. So I think if you can just encapsulate that, you still may not get the job because the corporate policies and other factors may weigh against you. But again, let's go through that. You were honest. You were simple, you took responsibility, and you indicated you could move on from a problem. That's what I would want to hear as an employer if that question came up.
I really appreciate that.
Yeah, somebody's going to want to invest in you, Taylor. Somebody's going to hear it the way Joel heard it, and they're going to say, we're going to invest in this kid. That's going to happen. And any job search is a numbers game. Yours just might be a little bit more tries. But you're going to get it. So,
having said that, and having Julie give you some input about that, we also want to look at this point you made in your email about not being defined by your felony. And that was actually quite a powerful way you put that. Can you say to us what you meant by that, and then we can help you with that?
Well, I just really what it comes down to is I don't want a 10-second mistake to haunt me for the rest of my life. And like I told you guys before, I've done a lot of therapeutic work with mental health professionals to kind of control that in my outside life, but I don't want it to kind of bleed into my professional life, because when I was in county jail, I took some of the classes that were talking about coming back out and reacclimating yourself into the real world. And they have staffing agencies and different things like that. But it seems that all the positions that they're trying to offer people that are coming out of the penal system are more along the lines of really unskilled labor work, which I believe I've worked hard in my life to try and find positions that are a little more professional than that.
Right. So I'm going to let Julie answer that, because I think that you should continue to try to track in the area you're trained in and skilled in. What do you think, Julie?
Oh, absolutely. And making a difference in other people's lives the way you've described, helping people get jobs and put food on their table, and being able to see the purpose behind what the work is that you're doing is definitely something you should continue to pursue. I can only imagine the difficulties and frustrations and expense of time and money and energy that you and your support system have gone through to pay the price and get you where you are. All of that aside, at 27 years old, you sound like a very mature young man who is accomplished and successful already in the 27 years, given, everything leading up to the event. And it sounds like you've even landed on your feet here. So I know it may be hard to see today when you're staring at the felony right behind you in your rearview mirror immediately, but 10 years from now, you might find that it triggered a greater ability for you to be more insightful and more thoughtful and more deliberate and more intentional in your decisions. And I believe at some point in your near future that you will, I don't want to say be thankful, but you'll be able to see this speed bump as a growth point for you that can change the course of the impact that you can make on others. So all of that being said, move forward, my friend. Move forward with smaller companies who are not going to have big corporate regulations and issues to I think a smaller company is your greater option, and definitely in the sales position, because we don't want to change your role. There's enough to overcome right now.
When you said, Taylor, that you didn't want to let you be defined by your felony, now from what I'm understanding, getting to know you, you were really talking about the way the external world defines you, not the way you define yourself internally, because it sounds like internally you've had therapy, you've had counseling, you've come to terms with what you've done, you've taken responsibility, but you're concerned that the external world will continue to define you by that one event. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
Yes, you're absolutely correct.
Right. So that is a concern, and I think, Julie, where you were headed a moment ago is actually where we need to go to kind of conclude this call, Taylor, and give you a little more feedback about that. What you don't know, because you're too young, is that many professionals and adults make mistakes.
Oh, yeah.
Bad things happen to good people all the time. And what happens is that, as a door closes, another door opens up. It's a very common phrase, but it is true. Julie and I think you probably have the skills and have taken the responsibility to know that you will be able to move forward. However, it will be difficult. There will be a period of time during which the event that happened will kind of haunt you at the level that certain jobs will be closed to you. But that doesn't mean life is closed to you. That doesn't mean accomplishment is closed to you. Just because you may not be able to do this job with this company doesn't mean you can't work, be productive, and have a fabulous life in the future. That's really the kind of the message we're trying to give you today.
Taylor, how do you want to be seen by an employer? How do you want to be defined?
Wow. I haven't had the chance to think about that question. That's an amazing question.
That's the question. And we need to put words to that, and you need to say that to people, because let's work that up. Let's give you the right description. Who do you want to be seen as?
I want to be seen as a positive leader in my community that's coming into a work that's going to be successful and going to have the opportunity to grow within a company, to one day be in a leadership role and to be able to help people out, because I've experienced the darkness and it's something that I wouldn't wish upon my worst enemy. And so I do whatever I can to help out my fellow to stay away from that and to achieve success.
Okay, again, that's very well said, remarkably so for your age. And I think that, as you present yourself in that way, here's what's going to happen. Because of the way the corporate world works, as even Julie said, with smaller companies, there will be some doors that will be closed to you. But somewhere that will resonate with someone. Mm-hmm. That message will reach someone, an employer or a person in power who has hiring capability, and they will go, you know what? I see beyond that one incident with that particular person, and I see the person behind that, and I'm going to take a chance on that person. I'm going to give that person an opportunity. And you, Taylor, need to hold on to knowing that's going to happen.
That is going to happen.
That is what you need to hold on to, because if you do, you will keep that optimistic, very honest and open quality you're showing Julie and I today, and you will eventually be successful.
In fact, we're going to plug you right here on the CareerLab podcast. For any listeners out there who are looking for a hitter of a young man with a degree in human development, a college athlete, a wonderful soul, and you want to take an investment on somebody and you can't afford to get that Stanford grad, I would encourage you to reach out to the CareerLab podcast. Let Joel or I know that you'd be willing to interview this young man. We would love to hear from you.
Okay, Taylor.
I greatly appreciate that, guys.
We are happy to do it. It's been a very interesting and wonderful segment with you. Because you've been a guest on CareerLab, that entitles you to have a one-on-one meeting with either Julie and I to do a deeper dive into these issues, because we know that we can't get to everything with every guest. Mm-hmm. So we will reach out to you and set that up, and we'll be able to do that virtually or in person, depending upon where you are and what you'd like. So we really want to thank you for coming on CareerLab. In fact, you've enriched the program by your sharing today.
Very much.
And for Julie and I, it's been a pleasure as well, seeing you and working with you. So we wish you the best of luck, Taylor, and good luck.
And Taylor, thank you for having the guts to call in. Stay strong. Keep moving forward, one foot in front of another, and don't take no for an answer.
Okay.
Thank you guys very much for having me.
Take it easy. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Well, that was a quite an interesting segment, huh, Julie?
Yeah.
Let's tear that down for a little bit.
I don't even really know where to start. I mean, he's such an amazing candidate, but then there's that. So that's going to knock him out of the running in a lot of different opportunities.
A lot of opportunities, yeah. But I think I mean, the call seemed to be to develop based on who he was.
Mm-hmm.
He could have been someone else. He could have had a very different attitude. He could have been cavalier. There could have been a lot of things.
None of that.
But because he had such authenticity and sincerity, which we were both able to not only pick up on but respond to, I think I think we were trying to give him the best perspective we could on the situation. And, you don't know what's going to happen to a person like that because it is going to be tough.
Mm-hmm. I tell my clients, I try to set them up for the 80-20 rule where 80% of the time the door's going to open for them. In his case, he's probably starting at the 20-80 rule.
Right.
But there's still somebody out there.
There is. But the question for him is him being able to keep that attitude and that orientation that he has towards that in the face of the rejection and the difficulty he's going to get based on what happened to him.
He has no choice but to do that. He has to reach back into the endurance and perseverance and hard work and intensity that got him through the college athletic program. He's going to have to bring that through.
But unfortunately, a lot of people don't have those resources.
Well, he does, and he's going to have to pull them.
So he seemed to have those, but I'm saying that's the real test of a person in this context. And I think people who do have a very serious problem in life of whatever kind and are successful are people who have those resources. Now, having said that, and wanting to be fair to everybody, and especially on CareerLab, those resources can be developed. They're not something you either have or don't have and you never can get. For those of our listeners, I think it's fair to say that those resources can be improved and developed. And if you find yourself in a situation like that, go and get yourself the kind of help that will help you develop those resources. In the case of Taylor, what was pretty clear was that he'd had mental health treatment.
Right.
And it had really worked for him because there was a very clear sense of him taking responsibility for his behavior. There was no equivocating about that.
Right.
And there were some other things, too, that showed the mental health treatment that he'd had really worked for him.
Right.
So, those are the kinds of things that if you, any of our listeners, find yourself, even a problem not as severe, you can improve your ability to bring resources to the game and to improve the outcome, right, Julie?
Absolutely. I mean, I think he was a pretty well-adjusted kid, it sounds like. And, he came out utilizing all of the tips and tools and inner strength that they taught him. I mean, everything that was offered to him, it sounds like he sounds coachable, I think, is just to sum it up. He sounds very coachable.
I agree. Well, that was a really wonderful segment. I'm glad, like you said, I'm glad he had the courage to call in.
Me too.
Right. Also, for our listeners, that also gives you one more tip, which would be if things aren't going well and there has been some serious breaches or breaks, call us. We can talk with you about it. And Julie can help you with it.
And Joel, you too.
Okay.
If you'd like to be a guest on CareerLab, send me an email. Visit CareerLabNow.com. While you're there, download my proven curriculum with over 200 entry-level job titles, samples of resumes which have snagged my clients the interviews they want, and a job search strategy that will work for all junior professionals like you. Visit CareerLabNow.com. CareerLabNow.com.